Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. To counter the U.S.'s so-called reciprocal tariff measures, China began imposing export controls on several rare earth metals in April, affecting global high-tech industries, including defense and energy. The White House has warned that this move threatens U.S. national security and economic resilience. According to Reuters, Beijing has effectively weaponized its control over rare earth elements. To avoid being held hostage by China, President Trump is pushing for deep-sea mining, and the U.S. has also secured rights to extract rare earth minerals in Ukraine. As tensions between Washington and Beijing continue to escalate, we take a closer look at how China may play the rare earth card in the ongoing trade war. Joining us today are Huang Huibo, National Zhengzhi University Department of Diplomacy professor, and Chu-Ping Hu, East Asian International Relations Caucus co-founder. A warm welcome to both of you on this show. Rare earth metals refer to 17 chemical elements. While they're not rare in terms of abundance, they're difficult to mine and refine. According to CNN, these materials are essential to the production of modern technology, from smartphones to advanced military equipment such as the F-35 fighter jet, M1 Abrams tanks, and U.S. Navy warships. In 2024, China's mine production of rare earth minerals reached 270,000 metric tons, accounting for nearly 70% of global output. And in contrast, the United States produced only about 1/6 of that amount, making up just over 10% of the global share. In the field of rare earth refining, the International Energy Agency estimates that China holds about 92% of the global market share, far ahead of second-ranked Malaysia and Vietnam. So we understand that China actually monopolized the mining and refining of rare earth. And also on April 4th, Beijing announced export controls of these critical minerals. And in just 1 month, the price tripled for some rare earth materials. This is according to a report by Nikkei. So I would like to direct the question. Let's start with Professor Huang. How do you see this development?
Apparently, if the statistics given by Nikkei are accurate, then we can see a very obvious monopoly by mainland China. That has been so actually for years, because the Western countries either didn't have interest in exploring all those rare earth minerals from their own territories, or they have had some very strict environmental law protections which prevented them from building up those necessary factories as soon as possible. I saw a story showing that it might take some 20 years in the United States to build up a factory to refine these rare earth minerals. So if it takes 20 years, so how can the U.S. compete with mainland China authorities in terms of exploring of rare earth? And also I have seen some sorts of weaponization of this rare earth by mainland China. It is I would say, a self-defensive mechanism by the Beijing authorities, given the context that the Donald Trump administration has imposed huge tariffs on mainland China's products. So weaponization of the rare earth might be a response of Beijing authorities to fight back on Trump's tariff warfare. And also, I've seen some decoupling between mainland China and, for example, the countries such as US and Australia and Japan by not purchasing rare earth minerals, if possible, because these countries would like to seek rare earth independence. Whether or not they will be successful, I don't know. But according to the current development, these countries have been trying very hard to get rid of those rare earths from mainland China.
We definitely will talk more about the rare earth independence for some countries later. But I would like to direct my question to you, Professor Hu. We understand that, as what was mentioned by Professor Huang, now we're talking about the monopolization and even weaponization of China. They're taking advantage of their possession of the rare earth. What will be the immediate impacts that we can see? How will this issue impact the whole world or the United States?
Yeah, so with the triple of the price of some of the rare earth minerals, it's already impacting on prices of Apple products. So Tesla, which also the electronic vehicles that rely on some of the rare earth elements are heavily impacted. And more so for the defense industrial corporations, such as Lockheed Martin, many of the weapon systems also rely on some of those rare earth minerals. So we can see that the supply chain around the world is heavily impacted, but as China actually produce or have rare earth deposits, about 60% from the world total deposit, and the impact of the fact that China actually refine and process 90% of them, meaning that none of the corporation would be free from such implications. So it is very important for United States to recalibrate their national strategy and especially when it comes to the rare earth mineral supply chain resilience.
So based on what you said, the energy and the defense industry have been affected. According to the South China Morning Post, they're citing a report by U.S. data analytics firm Govini. They're saying that 78% of America's weapon supply chain is already affected by China's rare earth export control, including the F-35 fighter jet. How accurate is this assessment, Professor?
So as of 2024, the report released by the United States of some of the rare earth minerals that they acquired from the global market, the second highest is from Malaysia, as shown in the data just now. So for example, Malaysia produced yttrium, so which is the type of mineral that is used in the laser system, radar sensories. So, and the US rely on that mineral 100% from Malaysia. So it is very important for the United States to build strategic partnerships with their allies and regional partners in the region where rare earth deposits were abundant.
So, Professor Huang, how do you think that this kind of monopoly or tight control of Chinese rare earth will affect, say, America?
Actually, what we have seen from the media is that the U.S. has shown a great concern of its production of those weaponry systems, because these rare earths, actually, they are not really seen, but they are so difficult to be acquired and to be refined. So the U.S. has had the intention to build up its rare earth exploration and refinement capability till today, till nowadays. These weaponry systems ranging from radars, as Professor Hu just mentioned, and engines, missiles, and the cruising systems, guiding system, all those, plus the airplane's coating to anti-radar waves, all these need some sort of rare earth. And for U.S., unfortunately, these rare earths not only has been produced on mainland China, but the refinement and the technology also are in mainland China. So the U.S. is showing some big concern. And also for some other issues, like those most advanced technological equipments, more and more, including our mobile phones, they rely partially on rare earth to have a better performance. So I think the U.S. is seeking a way to get away from mainland China's monopoly of rare earth, but I think it takes a long time for the U.S. to be able to successful.
Definitely, if the U.S. would like to diversify its source for access of the rare earth, it takes time. And just recently, the U.S. and Ukraine signed an agreement granting American companies exclusive development rights to Ukraine's key mineral resources, including aluminum, graphite, oil, and natural gas, in exchange for America's assistance to post-war reconstruction. So what is the strategic value of this agreement? Professor Hu?
So I think it is part of this agreement is about some of those critical minerals, so which is different from rare earth minerals. So I think these are not rare earths. So in the way that the United States is trying to secure as much critical minerals as they can. So this is not only for their energy security supply chain, but also for the construction of their critical infrastructure that is required by the United States. So in that sense, electric vehicles and semiconductors are highly reliant on some other deposits around the world, of which the US corporations are already investing. So for example, in Greenland, Canada, and also in Australia. So these are just coincidentally also the critical partners for the United States as well.
Mm-hmm. So talking about the importance of not just the rare earth minerals, but also the critical minerals, definitely these countries would like to possess as much as possible. So Professor Huang, to what extent can this agreement strengthen U.S. supply chain security? As mentioned by Professor Hu, we understand that these minerals or metals are important for, say, energy or, say, EV or weapon system or even semiconductor. How will this kind of balance secure the supply chain?
As a matter of fact, such an agreement sounds fascinating, hopeful, but actually, I personally do not think this agreement would help U.S. a lot with its security supply chain, energy security supply chain, partially because Ukraine, yes, it does contain some rare earth minerals, but actually in terms of the portion of its vis-a-vis the amount mainland China holds, actually it's not that significant. And also partially because the U.S., I think, does not concentrate mostly on the minerals, rare earth minerals, but the U.S. chances and possibilities of engaging in this reconstruction after the war between Ukraine and Russia. So I think the Donald Trump administration is looking at the aftermath of the reconstruction rather than the acquisition of rare earth minerals from Ukraine.
Definitely, in order to diversify risk, they need to find alternative sources for this kind of products. And President Donald Trump recently signed an executive order expanding the United States deep sea mining operations in not only the U.S., but also in international waters. So as the U.S. rushes to catch up, how long will it take before deep sea mining yield substantive results? Professor Hu.
So, for example, Japan recently had a new discovery of rare earth minerals in the seabed of its Minami Torishima Island, which is within Japan's exclusive economic zones. So, and to set up such capability, even for Japan, it requires time to build up such infrastructure and so. And the recent news of China trying to start a deep sea mining operation within the Cook Islands deep sea also invites some concerns from Australia and New Zealand, for example. So deep sea mining is definitely the new area for exploration because to detect such a deep sea mining deposit require advanced technology as well. So I think we are seeing the new type of competition in the arena where many of us have never been to before.
Indeed, you can say all these have been unprecedented challenges, whether it's the rare earth competition or the so-called reciprocal tariffs. Moving back to what you just said, Professor Huang, you said that the United States is compared to China, it's lagging behind in a refining technology for the rare earth by 20 years. So for Washington, what will be the short-term strategy to reduce their dependence on China?
To my best knowledge, the U.S. Defense Department has had some agreements with countries like Australia and one of the European countries to recognize these countries' export of rare earths as U.S. domestic products, which would be exempt from tariffs and so on. That is one of the obvious efforts by the U.S. administrations to enhance its rare earth mineral independence from mainland China. That is one of the ways I have known. And another way that I could say is that the U.S. is like it's in its chip business, has been attempting to establish some sort of supply chain among its partners, among its alliances without mainland China. But this is hard because not only the amount of the rare earth production yearly around the world, I mean, the largest amount is mainland China's. It's about 55 to 65% depending on your statistics. And in terms of the refinement and the after refinement products, mainland China's accounted for more than 90% based on all the statistics I have read. So I think the US is making some effort, but I do not think in the near future the US will be able to conquer it.
Definitely, we have to see what other alternatives are available. Since taking office, President Trump has expressed interest in bringing Greenland and Canada under U.S. influence. How is this linked to the global race for rare earth resources? According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Greenland and Canada rank 8th and 10th worldwide in terms of rare earth reserves. So, based on the statistics that we're given, what will be President Trump's strategic consideration, Professor Hu?
So I believe that the U.S. Department of Defense has already conducting their critical mineral mapping all around the world, and this is why Greenland come up with on top of its list because of its deposits of such resources. Not only Greenland and Canada, but we also are looking at the African continent, such as DR Congo, and in Central Asia, so possibly they would not go there because China have massive influence in the Central Asian region. Australia is actually originally the main player when it comes to rare earth elements because they have a company called Linus. So the Linus company in the US called the Linus USA is actually one of the biggest player and the biggest contractor for the Department of Defense right now. So we are looking at how the Trump administration is actually strategizing through the US National Defense Industrial Strategy, which also includes identifying critical resources mapping and such. They would use that information to establish strategic partnerships with regional partners.
So we understand that ever since President Trump took office, he just passed the 100-day anniversary, right? And things have changed significantly. One of the most important policies proposed by the Trump administration is their so-called reciprocal tariffs. How will the rare earth metals be used as a leverage to counter the effects from the tariff war against the United States? Professor Huang.
I personally think Donald Trump is messing things up because he's adding more and more challenges to a lot of countries around the world. So not only tariffs, but also his personal requests from his desire to take back or to regain Greenland, Canada, etc. And also his personal preference of not using the so-called reusable energy or green energy, and he preferred those diesel-based energy for his future energy policy plans. So if Donald Trump really would like to use this rare earth mineral battle in his future national strategic plans, I think that would not only baffle but also complicate U.S. relations with a lot of its partners and allies. For example, if we look at the statistics indicating the amount of rare earth possession, country by country, of course, mainland China is number one, followed by Brazil, India, Australia, and Russia. And look at relations between Russia and mainland China. They are very good. Look at relations between Brazil and mainland China. I think they're good too. What about India? India has upheld an independent foreign policy, non-alignment policy. So India, depending on its own national interests, India can cooperate with U.S. or with mainland China. Whatever India thinks its national interests will be located. So what I meant is that actually Donald Trump using rare earth I do not think that's impossible, but that wouldn't do good for the U.S. and that will, make some other countries to ponder upon the possibility of, rebuild relations with Beijing or improve relations with Beijing in order to have some hedging policy.
Talking about the other possible allies to the United States, we understand that, countries definitely want to reduce their dependence on China. So both of you have mentioned Australia for a few times. After China imposed restrictions on rare earth exports, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that Australia would establish a strategic reserve of critical minerals with plans to sell to its key partners in response to escalating trade tensions. So Australia has huge possession of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and other critical minerals. So in this complicated geopolitical situation, what will be the opportunity for Australia?
So I think for Australia, because they have this advantage of already venturing into rare earth before anyone else. So as I said just now, Lynas USA is playing a very crucial role. Back in Australia, Lynas Rare Earth is its own subsidiary. So they are investing in countries where they have detected the rare earth deposits. So for example, when Malaysia announced that they have found a new deposit with rich rare earth elements, Australia was one of the first to rush to the country and to negotiate for the investment scheme. However, despite the fact that, like Professor Huang has mentioned, China already dominates the rare earth deposits and processing capabilities in the world, but yet when Malaysia made the announcement, China also rushed to secure an agreement with Malaysia. So we will see that the battlefield is not only between US and China, but also with different players around the world, not just the government, but also private sectors rushing into securing. This is because this is definitely in the major corporations' interest to secure supply chain for the production of their, whether it is electronic vehicles, semiconductor products, or even the weapon systems, so which is highly sensitive. So as for Australia, they can also look to building collaboration capacity. For example, in France, they are now trying to build the first rare earth plant that is the first outside of China, so with the help from Japan as well. So with such a collaboration take place, it will not be surprising if US and Australia will also forge such a collaboration more and more in the foreseeable future.
So Professor Hu, you talk about something very important, that is the international cooperation beyond China, right? So the European Union also launched its Critical Raw Materials Act, aiming to source at least 40% of the strategic minerals domestically by 2030. As what you have mentioned, France is working with Japan. They're trying to diversify. They have this timeline, 40% of strategic minerals domestically by 2030. How realistic is this timeline? And do you think that the EU can also reduce its dependence on China for the rare earth supply? Professor Huang.
It's very interesting to observe the ongoing relationships between EU and mainland China. So especially on these rare earth issues, actually you can see these deep doubts of these European Union leaders on mainland China. But if the technological prediction is accurate, then I think by 2030, mainland China will remain the largest place that produce rare earth minerals, and it will still control probably some 75% of the refinement of rare earth minerals around the world. Therefore, so I know why the European Union is making efforts to get away from the mainland China's influence or impact. But given the slowness of, as I said before, building up these factories to be able to explore and refine rare earth minerals, not to mention these very high bar on the environmental protection in European countries, I doubt that these European countries' plan by 2030 will work.
Now, finally, my final question. Let's turn our focus back to Taiwan. As we understand, Taiwan does not produce rare earth elements. So how should we, or how should the Taiwanese government respond to China's export control, and how should we position ourselves in this complicated situation? Professor Hu.
So because Taiwan is number one when it comes to the semiconductor supply chain, so coincidentally, some of its major partners, including Vietnam and Malaysia, also hold some of the rare earth element deposits. So what Taiwan can do is to strengthen collaboration in terms of securing the rare earth supplies together with the partners who are already in deep partnership with Taiwan over semiconductor production and manufacturing.
Professor Huang, what will be your suggestion for Taiwan?
I think Taiwan doesn't have to put all eggs in one basket. So beyond mainland China, of course, Vietnam, Malaysia could be possible. But still, if mainland China can produce very fine and very cheap rare earth minerals, why not? So I think Taiwan really have to use wisdom to keep good relations with all its possible trading partners in order to get these rare earth minerals as much as possible.
Any more concrete suggestions? Definitely, we know that do not put all the eggs in the same basket, but what will be the concrete measures?
Try to keep good relations with all its neighbors, and especially in cross-strait relations, because Taiwan, mainland China, they are just adjacent to each other. So no way Taiwan can have a very good economic conditions or development without better relations with mainland China. So nowadays you can see Taiwan's economy has been dependent on its chips industries. But what about next? So I think Taiwan needs to think further in order to cope with some possible challenges in the future.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you very much for sharing with us with your insight. Thank you. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.